The last 24 hours have seen the war widen, this time to Egypt, where a drone hit the port of Damietta, setting 2 ships there on fire. It's the first time that country has been targeted in the war. No one has claimed responsibility, and today Iran's foreign ministry urged vigilance against what it called false flag operations designed to undermine regional peace. The foreign minister also warned Cyprus and Bulgaria against allowing the U.S. to use their bases to launch attacks on Iran. In another sign of expanding hostilities, Saudi Arabia, for the first time in this war, joined the U.S. in a strike against Iranian-backed militias inside Iraq.
How big is this getting?
Bigger and bigger, and it's moving almost inexorably toward the west. Think a Western Front. We talked about that in World War II. Here it is, the Red Sea, the Suez Canal, owned and operated by Egypt, strikes on Jordan. And the Iranians are also threatening NATO partners, saying, whatever you do, NATO partners, don't allow your bases to be used for strikes against us. So we're seeing a kind of inexorable movement to the west here, Brianna, and it's very worrisome. Here's the play. The Iranians are pulling in as many of the Arab states as they can, hoping that they, the Arab states, will turn around, put pressure on the U.S. to pull out. I think it's going to backfire on them. And I'll close with this. I am seeing pretty credible reporting that the Saudis are trying to put together a coalition of Arab states in order to push back on this Red Sea challenge they're facing. So I don't think this is going to work for Iran, but that's the game they're playing.
And you also are looking at Iran reiterating the Strait of Hormuz is going to remain closed. You have 14 mostly regional countries backing that maritime defense alliance that's supposed to protect the shipping routes, the global trade. What does the future of global shipping through all of these regional waterways look like in your view?
You've put your finger on why all this matters beyond the pretty obvious day-to-day impact on the global economy of shutting down a major strait. Why it really matters is, broadly speaking, are we going to preserve freedom of the high seas? Are we going to preserve transit rights through straits around the world? Are we going to protect our Suez Canal, Panama Canal, and other areas of the oceans that are so crucial to trade? So I think, again, you're going to see Iran's efforts here backfire. It'll lead to the coalition that you and I just talked about of Arab states. But what I'm hoping for, Brianna, is the Europeans, who after the United States and perhaps China had the third most powerful combination of warships. Will the Europeans come into this alongside the U.S. to reopen this strait? I'm hoping that is what happens. And that would be, in that case, a real strategic mistake by the Iranians to broaden this conflict.
And speaking of Europe, Iran's foreign minister actually warned 2 European countries, Cyprus and Bulgaria, against allowing the U.S. military to use their bases. How much ability does Iran have to back up those kind of warnings?
Limited, but not completely benign, meaning if you look at the ranges of their maximalist ballistic missiles, in theory, they could reach all the way to Eastern Europe, Bulgaria, or into the Eastern Mediterranean, where the nation of Cyprus, not a NATO member, by the way, but a European Union member, sits. So again, Iran is pushing at the Arab world to the west. Now we're seeing them push toward the European world even further. Ultimately, I think this will backfire on the mullahs in Tehran. I hope it does.
Today, China's foreign minister dismissed reports from Reuters that Beijing is sending 300 to 400 shoulder-fired air defense missile launchers to Iran. That's according to the country's state-run news agency. U.S. intel had indicated that China was preparing to deliver new air defense systems to Iran. So I think that there was this expectation of that. That's what CNN's reporting has been. What kind of concerns does this raise for you? What does this look like?
It's not just the package of potential shoulder-fired missiles, whether that's a good piece of intel or less assured. But what it ought to worry all of us is if China is going to line up alongside Iran to the degree of providing military-grade hardware or even, Brianna, components that go into it, that's extremely worrisome because it gives Tehran a lifeline. It's the phone a friend concept. Tehran worked closely with Russia. If Beijing starts to step in alongside Russia, supporting Tehran, we'll have a bigger problem that could, final thought, bleed over into the Pacific as well.
What the president could do is what he might be uncomfortable doing, and that's asking for help. If you have those Asian allies that need the strait to be open, you have Europe partially dependent on Middle East oil. You have all the Gulf states at play here, as well as Israel, a major coalition to do two things: to pressure the Iranians diplomatically with one full-throated voice, but also to exact economic sanctions on the Iranians, because we know their pressure point, maybe not so much as their military, it's their economy. That has to happen. But Jim, I think ultimately, this, as General Gibson says, this is going to be a war of attrition. We're going to have to grind down their military, but they're not going to give in anytime soon.
Well, but Ambassador, there's another credibility question, too, because deals with this president, I think one could reasonably say, don't always hold up. Ask the Saudis about the nuclear deal. The president seems to be raising questions about his promise to allow Ukraine to build interceptors under license. Ask any U.S. trading partner about trade deals negotiated in the last months and several years. Why would Iran calculate rationally that if it negotiates with this president, that any deal will hold?
Well, I think General Gibson is right. The Iranians are going to wait us out. They think they're tougher and more resilient than we are, and they don't have midterm elections and public opinion to contend with. So I think that's a factor here. That's why I think, Jim, your question is a good one. I don't think the Iranians are going to trust commitments made by Steve Witkoff or Jared Kushner or President Trump himself. It's why you need to internationalize this conflict a bit, to get other countries that the Iranians do care about to come in with economic sanctions. The Saudis have this idea, just floated today, of a coalition to try to secure shipping channels in the Red Sea. The British and French have been talking for well more than a year about a coalition of countries that would come in to the Hormuz eventually, if there is a permanent ceasefire or a durable one, to escort ships through the strait. So the U.S. simply cannot succeed on its own. It needs help from the allies that the president has spent a lot of time demeaning recently.